It's that time of year again. I'm gonna tear apart this Cadillac. I just hit 200,000 miles and it's been giving me some issues with rough starts. It's been burning a little bit of oil, so I think that I need to get down into the engine and tighten down my cam sprocket bolts that get loose on these LS6s and replace my valve springs and valve seals. It's gonna be a busy week. Hopefully this fixes it. Making some progress. Got the fuel rails off, throttle body off, got the coolant drain, made a mess. Here's all my shit. Fuel rails, fuel line, throttle body, all this shit, coils. I'm gonna keep pulling stuff off until there's no car left. All right, here's a camshaft position sensor. This is one of the sensors that could have been giving me a rough start. Super easy to pop out back here. I'm gonna push it back in, and that's it. So that's one of the things. Now I gotta pull the rest of this apart. Now that I have the harmonic balancer bolt out, I have this gear puller here, and it has this dowel rod that kind of goes in the center. And when I start turning this, these teeth here are gonna start pulling this harmonic balancer off the motor. Well, I'm a fucking idiot. I was backing out this bottom bolt here, and this wrench can only go one way. So now this wrench is stuck here. So I gotta figure this out. Woo! Finally got it out. Note to self, don't use these closed-ended ones in tight spots. Only use open-ended. Here is my timing chain. These are my cam sprocket bolts, and they're actually tight as hell. So, thinking maybe it was the cam sensor that was causing the backfire on cold starts. I don't know. Maybe it was the oil leaking through my valve seals, giving it a delayed start sometimes because it has to burn through that shit. Don't know. I've been busy doing a bunch of shit that I can't really film. I pulled out the passenger side header because I needed to pull out my starter that you can see down in there because I need to install this flywheel tool, and these teeth will hold onto my flywheel and not let it move. Your starter actually has a gear that connects to your flywheel, which turns your whole engine over, but locking the flywheel in place will hold everything still for when I put the harmonic balancer back on, because I'll have to crank it to 250 foot-pounds torque to get it on correctly, and if the motor is moving while I do that, I'm not going to get the correct torque reading. I have the tool installed now. You can see it right there, holding on to the flywheel. This is killing me. I am right here by my camshaft, and I've wanted to swap this thing out since I bought the car. But if I want to swap the cam, that's another $1,000. About $400 or $500 for a camshaft, $500 for a tune. But I can gain like 30 or 40 horsepower, and this thing will sound like a monster. But I'm in between jobs right now, and it sounds like a bad idea, or it could be a really good idea because it'd be fun. This is where it gets a little tricky. So on valve springs, there are little tiny keepers here. These like 2 half circles. That is what holds this plate on the top and the spring in place. So I have this tool, it bolts into the head. This nut, I'm gonna torque it down, and it's gonna push this plate back. These valves, the top of the valves right here, they will stay up, and then this plate goes down, and I can pull these little rings out, the keepers. The valves, they would drop down into the cylinder head, but I have this air hose hooked up into my spark plug hole, and I'm gonna keep 50 PSI-ish of air pressure in there, and it pushes the valves up so that I can pull these springs off, pull the seats off, the seals, and put new ones in. Man, this shit is fun. Wish I could do this all day. I got 4 done. Over here you can see the blue LS6 stock springs. I was actually nervous about this, you know, it's my first time doing engine work, but this is really easy. I'm gonna keep plugging away. I don't think there's a point to keep filming because it's the same shit every time, but 4 out of 16 done. Valve train is done. These are actually dual springs in here. It's a Brian Tooley racing kit that I put in. Here's all the old ones. Today, I'm gonna swap the camshaft on the Cadillac. I went and bought this Texas Speed Stage 2 boost cam, thinking maybe I might supercharge it later, so why not get this in there and ready to go. I got my timing lined up last night because I'm going to pull this gear off because the camshaft is back through here. There's 2 dots. One of them is right here at the bottom of the timing gear, and the other one is on the crankshaft. Once you get those lined up, you can pull things apart, and then it gives you a reference for when you put it back together so that the timing stays the same. Okay, here's where it gets a little tricky. This camshaft, its whole purpose is to push up on the lifters that are inside of these heads on the side of the motor. I need to keep those lifters from falling down into my engine when I pull this camshaft out. To push the lifters up, I'm going to spin my stock cam. I got my water pump bolts hooked up here, and that's going to push the lifters up into the engine. So I've already done that a few times. Now I have this dowel rod here, just a wooden dowel rod, and I'm going to shove it in this hole, and that's going to hold my lifters from falling down back into the motor. All right, now I have another one here. Oh, fuck. I had to get that sticker off, so let's get this in here. Next, I need to lube up my cam with some assembly oil and throw it in there. Do it quick. Here is my cam thrust plate. I'm gonna get this on and torque it down to 11 foot-pounds. It's gonna hold oil pressure right in here above the cam. I'm gonna get this cam sprocket gear back on. The whole reason I took this thing apart was because I thought that these bolts were loose. They weren't, but for preventative measure, I'm gonna put this little plate on with the bolts. And what you do is you bend these tabs, and then when the tabs are bent and everything's back on, it holds the bolts in place so that they can't back out. Well, ordered the wrong part. This one is too big. I got the cam locking plate on. That finally came in today. 26 foot-pounds. And then there's 2 tabs on each bolt. I think I kind of hit that point today where you start shitting yourself because you look around the garage and your whole car's apart. But I got to keep plugging. I took out the driver's side header. I didn't film it. It was just a bunch of screaming and yelling the whole time. But I had to pull out the steering shaft right here to get it out, and that was a bitch. I'm going to pull the heads. I wasn't planning to pull the heads off this motor. Obviously, I wouldn't have done the valve train yet, but I'm gonna pull the heads, see how everything looks under there, and replace my lifters because I couldn't sleep at night knowing that something might fail after I put 3 or 4 grand into this piece of shit. Well, I did it, and that was a lot of fucking bolts to pull off of that. But the heads are off. I was concerned. I didn't sleep very well last night, but things aren't looking too bad. I am concerned about this cylinder on the driver's side. With these LS6s and LS1s, it was a common thing, and the 5.3s, for them to have piston slap. And my car has always had that since I bought it. It's a ticking noise that goes away once it's warmed up because the pistons are aluminum and they have to expand. So there's a little bit of scarring in this cylinder bore that I can feel. Other than that, I'm gonna fucking send it. Back down here, working on the Cadillac, getting these decks cleaned up for new head gaskets. I feel like they're looking good enough. I'll leave the pistons alone. I got the heads cleaned up enough. Checked everything with the straight edge and the feeler gauge to make sure that it is flat enough for the head gasket to not have issues. If you're ever using these chemicals to clean up metal, you should probably wear gloves and a mask, because if you don't, they will fuck your ass up for like 4 days. I thought I got COVID or some shit. Always wear a mask or else you'll need a kidney transplant like I did. So what I was doing right there was I was creating a thread chaser bolt. You can do this to clean any thread out if you want, but basically these bolt holes need to be perfectly cleaned out because GM, they like to use a shit ton of thread locker from the factory. So I need to get these cleaned out so that when I crank down the bolts for the heads, I don't get a bad torque reading because it has to be very accurate. So I need these threads to be perfectly clean. So when I run this through this uneven bolt, it will actually push the gunk out of the way. Or at least it should. All right, look at this. All that shit was in there. All right, the harmonic balancer on. Now I have this tool that will compress it on there. Well, I was going to record a video using my stock bolt to get this thing fully seated, because even with that tool, it's not on there 100%. So I was using the stock bolt to crank it down to 240 foot-pounds, and the head started to round off. So I backed that the fuck out because I don't want it stuck in there. So I'm just going to run and grab a new socket for my new ARP balancer bolt and get that in there to 235 foot-pounds like they recommend, and get this balancer fully on there so it's not going to spin off on me, and then hopefully get to the heads today if I can get those on. All right, got my bolt, got it lubed up with the shit they supplied. Okay. New balancers on. Next, I am going to get my valleys cleaned out here, get the stock lifters pulled out of here, and then I bought some cheap ass oil that I'm gonna flush into the top of the motor here because I did a lot of cleaning and I don't want any of that debris floating around in the motor. So I'm gonna flush it with some oil. It'll go down in that pan. Then I got my new lifters, some LS7 lifters and new trays ready to go in before I throw on the heads. Here's one of the stock lifters that came out of my motor, and basically the purpose of this has a roller on it and sits on top of the camshaft. When the camshaft is spinning, the lobe pushes it up and down, and there's a push rod that sits on top of this that goes up, pushes up on your rocker arm, which opens up your exhaust and intake valves. So these things do a lot of work. Passenger side head is on, minus the top bolts. I'm gonna crank those down to 25 each, but I got 80 all around for the main bolts to hold it on. Then I'm gonna hit the driver's side, same shit. I don't think I'm gonna film it, it's just repetitive. And then I'm gonna start slapping it all back together. I just about shit my pants. I got both the heads on, and I realized this sensor is right up here. So I definitely put the wrong head on each side, but I hit up my buddy and he said I can just move this sensor right up here, and then it doesn't really, I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't matter because it's like a 50-50 fucking chance this thing's gonna run anyways. I'm just gonna move the sensor, call it a day. There we go. That's great. So now I don't have to swap the heads. That would have been an additional $200 because I would have had to buy all the bolts again because they're one-time use. So I can actually sleep tonight. Tomorrow I need to get the intake back on, and then we'll see if it runs. Well, I was having a good day until this shit happened. I was throwing on the intake, and you're only supposed to torque the bolts to 89 foot-inches, which comes out to about 7 foot-pounds. And this bolt just kept turning and turning, and I had a bad feeling about it, and I should have stopped. And then eventually it went pop. That fucker is flush, and it is a small, tiny bolt. It's gonna be a bitch to get out. I'm gonna spend all day tomorrow using an extractor and a drill bit and this pick. Try to turn it out. Fuck my life. All right, backed it out this far. Tip I got from buddy is you just use a flathead, kind of like that, and then give it light taps, and it spins. Just slowly spin. It took a little bit, but got it working. Anyways, it's loose now, so. There we go. Now I can keep rolling. All right, I've been a little busy. I got my push rods in. Push rods are what push up. The lifters are the things I put in before that push up on these push rods, and then it makes the rocker turn. So I'm getting this done while I'm waiting on the intake bolts, but cylinder 1 is at top dead center right now, which means that these valves are closed so that I can get these torqued down without it pushing the valve down, because it can strip out these bolts. So with cylinder 1 at top dead center, that puts my exhaust valves 1, 2, 7, and 8 closed, and my intake valves 1, 3, 4, and 5 closed. So I got those rockers on each side, and then I'm gonna get it tightened down, spin the motor over, and get the other ones when they're closed, because I definitely don't want to strip these fuckers out like I did up there. I am getting fucking pumped. It's coming along. Got the water pump on, power steering pump on, got my pulleys back on. I don't think there's anything else from the rotating assembly that I missed. I got my valve covers on, waiting on intake bolts. Other than that, I just got to get the radiator in, get my fluids in, and intake, fuel lines, spark, coils, and all that. That'll be quick though. This right here is one of my fuel injectors. I already sent them off to get them cleaned, but I'm just getting a little bit of oil, motor oil, on these O-rings on each side before I install them in the fuel rail right here. This side hooks into my intake. All you do to put it in the fuel rail, just work it down like that. Make sure you don't tear the O-ring. You get it in there, and you grab one of these little brackets, slide it on like this. There we go. All right, here's my fuel rails, I guess, and injectors. I painted it. Kind of looks like shit, but I don't care. Today I did a bunch of shit on the top of the motor. Tomorrow I'm gonna be underneath the car. Gotta get that starter hooked up. Well, that's definitely one of the perks of being married. It's having a spare hand when I need it. I love that woman. Got the exhaust in, got the radiator in, got my coil packs on, spark plug wires, spark plugs down in there. Pain in the ass. But yeah, should be firing it up tomorrow. You ready? Yep. All right, here we go, folks. Let's check just one more time. Make sure nothing's leaking. Okay. She's running. Well, I guess I'm happy. She's running and nothing catastrophic happened yet. Took me a little over a month. I think it was worth it. I probably saved myself $3 or $4 grand in labor because all the speed shops wanted like $4,500 when I called a few years ago to get the cam swap and valve train done. So I'm happy about that. But yeah, car's done. I just need to get it tuned and I need to flush out my coolant, but she should be back on the road soon.